Today I'm going to show you how to make a Geralt of Rivia build from The Witcher 3, and it's going to be a strength and faith based build. Now I did a series previously, we can't have the daughter without the father, without the number one dad. As you can see represented on the thumbnail as well, because I like making polls for thumbnails now. It's actually fun when you guys decide which one I use. And I was 100% sure that the number one dad was going to win, but I did it anyways. So as you probably already figured out, we're going to use faith to be able to use fire incantations, and we're going to use strength mainly for the scaling of our weapon, but also for the fire. And we're going to be using two swords like Geralt does in the games, in the books, in the show. The silver one being for monsters in the lore, which will be represented by the long sword here, which will have the sacred affinity because of our faith. And now the broadsword is going to be the iron sword, the one we use mainly against every other type of enemy that isn't undead or is resistant to sacred damage. So this broadsword will have the heavy affinity, so the damage will scale actually with A in strength. Now as for the Witcher signs, obviously we're going to be using incantations to do this. Surge O Flame actually literally is Igni. It looks exactly like it, and so that's what we're going to be using to do our primary fire damage. Now the other sign we can do is Quen, which is the shield, so we'll be using the magic protection incantation to simulate that particular sign. And as for the Ash of War, we'll be using square off on both of our weapons because it's just the stance that Geralt actually adopts in the games. And you have a choice of a light attack, a heavy attack that travels far, and the light attack can actually stance break enemies and break their guard if they have a shield. So it's going to be extremely good for this build because as we know, blocking enemies will not take as much fire damage. So breaking their guard, going for a critical, or breaking their guard and then doing fire damage is going to be the bread and butter of this build. So that's basically how it's going to work. I mean, you'll see by the footage. And as for the stats, I actually did something a bit different this time. I went with 55 in faith because that is our first primary damage stat, and 50 in strength. Now we're going to be using the strength talisman, which is going to give us 5 more points, which is 5 more points we can put somewhere else. So I actually prioritize vigor for this build, and then mind, and then endurance at the very last. So you can change things around if you don't particularly like this configuration, but I like that we have to rely on using the swords as well and not just the incantations, because that's what a Witcher does, right? And because Witchers use potions and they put oils on their blades, and also they use types of grenades, we're going to be using the same. I mean, you can craft any type of grenade you want, any type of grease you want to put on your weapon to buff it. That's why also the broadsword is the one that you can put any type of damage on it, so it really gives you a lot of options if you face enemies that are a bit more resistant to either sacred damage or fire damage. So you can pick and choose whichever one is going to work best for the enemy you're up against. So now that you know how this build works, I'm going to show you where everything is so that you can make it. Fashion wise and face wise, I'll put the link to the video that I followed to make this face, and I used the ponytail and the shaved sides with the goatee because that's what I usually do with my Geralt in game. But, obviously he has a couple hairstyles and can definitely play around with how you prefer Geralt to look, which is really cool. And for the fashion, as you can see, I'm wearing the Confessor set, the altered version. I'm wearing the Vagabond Knight's gauntlet and the page trousers. You could also use maybe the altered the Ronin armor, or I actually like the Caden armor as well, maybe if it didn't have the freaking fluff on it, or you could do the Vagabond altered, but I prefer the Confessor set anyways. I think it looks better. I'm going to show you where you can find the weapons we're going to use for this build. So for the broadsword, you can find it from the nomadic merchant near the coastal cave. So this is the coastal cave here. This is the first step, and that's where he'll be like underneath this like rubble. And for the second sword, the long sword, it's actually quite simple. You want to twin maiden husks at Round Table Hold, and you can buy it off of them. Now the seal we'll be using is the Erdtree seal, and you want to take the Prison Town Church side of grace. And I'll show you from here. It's pretty simple. Just want to get past the first snake dude. Make your way down here. And it'll be in this prison cell on this body right here. And finally, for the Ash of War we'll be using Square Off, you're gonna find it in Siofra River. You can take the Siofra River bank side of Grace or this one here, which would be closer. And just want to make your way to this cliff right here, and you'll have to hit a Teardrop Scarab to obtain this Ash of War. For the incantations, as I mentioned in the first part of the video, we'll be using Magic Fortification, Surge of Flame, and Flame Grant Me Strength. Now for a Magic Fortification, you can buy it straight from Brother Quen. So he'll either be at Round Table Hold or he'll be somewhere in the Altus Plateau, depending where you are in the story. For Surge of Flame, it's the same thing. You can buy it from Brother Quen or from the Turtle Pope, but you need to bring them the Fire Monk prayer book before you're able to purchase these. And that particular prayer book is located in Liurnia of the Lakes. It's located in this area right here. You'll see a Fire Monk outpost and there will be a dead body and you can loot it off of there. Now for Flame Grant Me Strength, I've shown this like about 1 billion times in the videos. So you need to take the Fort Gale north side of Grace, and then you need to actually go to Fort Gale, which is right here, and you want to go up on the mountain where the archer is, the left side of the fort, outside of it, and you'll see like 2 big flamethrowers and it'll be like right between them. Now for this build there's a few configurations you can do with the talismans. It really depends on what you want to use the most, but personally I think it's really good to use Flock's Canvas Talisman, the Fire Scorpion Charm, and the Ancestral Spirit's Horn because our mind is a little lower. If your mind is higher, then you can definitely replace the Spirit Horn with something like Shard of Alexander, for example. And we'll also be using the talisman that gives us 5 strength. Now to get the Ancestral Spirit's Horn, you need to fight the Regal Ancestor Spirit at the Nokron Eternal City. So it's in the Siofra River and it'll be in the Hallowed Grounds right here. That's where the boss fight is. So it's not this other Hallowed Grounds fight. Once you get to Siofra Riverbank, it's really this one once you go through the Eternal City. The Fire Scorpion Charm is found in Volcano Manor, but underneath it. So you have to pass through the Seedwater River, which you can access through the Windham Runes. So the easiest way is just to take the Archery Grazing Hill if you don't have Seedwater River. And just want to make your way to the Fort Lade right here. You'll have to fight a big fire chonky dude, and then you'll find the Scorpion Charm at the top of this fort. For Flock's Canvas Talisman, it's probably the longest to get because it's really like endgame. So you have to start Gary's quest, which is right here from Gary's shack, and you have to basically continue Millicent's quest line until you get to the Halleck Tree area, where you decide if you want to help her or help her sisters defeat her. Whatever outcome you choose, you have to go back to Gary at his shack and he'll be like crying or whatever, and because we have no soul you want to kill him while he's crying and he'll drop that talisman. Now for the last talisman, the Star Scorched Heirloom, you want to go to Fort Gale North again, and you'll actually find it inside the fort, and you'll be able to loot it at the top of the fort. There's like a little tower and you'll be able to loot it from a chest in there. Now you should have everything to be able to make this a Geralt of Rivia build. Let me know if you like this build and if you've tried something similar. If you want a friendly Discord to join, the link to mine is in the description of every video, and everyone is welcome. Other than that, everyone, have yourself an awesome day, and I'll see you all very soon.